Are you a sex worker looking to build a new website or a website redesign? Then you'll want to consider Fox Digital. They did a fantastic job designing my website, Stripped by Sia. If you want your website done, mention that you're a listener of the show at foxdigital.design for 20% off. Tell them I sent ya. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am Steph Sia, a digital content creator, a professional exotic dancer based in Canada, and former sugar baby, and I guess now I can definitely fully add on the cam model aspect since I am definitely streaming regularly now. I was going through like severe imposter syndrome, but now it's safe to say you can find me on Streammate under my name, Sia on camera. And I've been doing this show for the past, going into my fourth year of doing this show on a weekly basis. If you're new here, Stripped by Sia, the show is all about destigmatizing sex work, and I do that through education by sharing the stories and the lived experiences of sex workers, but not only people that are in front of the camera, people that are also behind the scenes. We also have nonprofit organizations that come in, allies, sex worker adjacent companies and whatnot, platforms, CEOs, stuff like that. So we really get a transparent and thorough approach to what sex work is, because for so long, society has been kind of dictating who we are and, shedding us in a really awful, stereotypical, and dangerous light. And I can kind of go on and on with these like negative terms because it has been negative for basically forever. So the show's just kind of here to, do our part in terms of like just describing and giving real accounts of the work that it is that we do, because it is work that deserves to be legitimized and recognized. So I do that by having conversations every week with different people from the industry, including this week, which I will very excitedly announce who our guest is today. But of course, if you're already playing it, you'll already see the name. But anyways, we're going to go through a couple more mandatory things that I have to talk about, like my wonderful Patreon subscribers. Thank you again. If you have been either a longtime patron, I've been doing that for a year. For those who are supporting the show, who want to try to support the show financially, because I've had a lot of requests, be like, where do I donate? And you do good work, and all this stuff is free and accessible for anyone to listen to. You could definitely do that by becoming a patron. So for as low as $4 for the price of a coffee or a really expensive avocado, you can definitely subscribe. It's patreon.com/strippedbysia, and there you can get exclusive video access. So all the behind the scenes videos that you can see from all the guests that I have from season 4 onwards will all be up on there. And there are bonus episodes that you have access to as well. There should be one out already for my time at the EVNs, and more things coming along the way. So if you want to go ahead and financially contribute, you can. Again, it's patreon.com/strippedbysia, and that basically goes towards my hosting of the website, maintenance, and stuff like that. All the boring things that you don't want to hear about, and equipment. So that's that. Also, if you do enjoy listening to shows like mine, you can also find similar podcasts and videocasts on skyhawkafterdarktv.com, which is an online network of, again, other adult industry and related shows and podcasts and videocasts that are all up in there, as well as like different kind of content. So feel free to take a look. It's skyhawkafterdarktv.com. And last but not least, I mentioned my website, which basically Patreon subscribers help fund and support. That is wonderfully made by my sponsor, Fox Digital. It's a sex worker friendly website builder who creates a website for you, or maybe if you want to remodel your website, you can definitely take a peek there. For listeners of Strip by Sia, Fox Digital is happily graciously giving 20% off to our listeners. So go ahead and message Anthony. He will definitely help you out there. It's foxdigital.design and tell him I sent you. Okay, we've got the under 5 minutes. I know you've been patiently waiting to see who is coming on the show today. I'm really excited to have this conversation today with Miss Cami Strella, who is joining us today to speak about some really interesting parts of her life. And I'm talking about her time in an MLM and how she's kind of shifted her life and using some of these sales tactics and stuff that she might have learned and adopted from her time in MLM. But also, I also want to highlight all the good that she's doing as well in terms of her the charitable efforts that she is doing to give back to the community, which like I don't hear much of in our industry. So I think it's really important to talk about that as well. So we're going to try to talk about all the things. Her life sounds
There's a lot.
crazy. Yeah, it's a lot. Your life sounds crazy. So I'm willing to go ahead and jump both feet in with you. But if you don't know who Cami is, and this is just my very small nugget of information that I know of you, Cami is a cam model, content creator, student, I guess, who was studying occupational therapy. You donate 10% of your monthly OnlyFans earnings to raise awareness and funds for causes around mental health and PTSD and all these wonderful things. And I just think what you're doing is amazing. So hello, welcome, and thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited. I'm like, how do we jump in? I'm like rearing out the gate. I'm like, please let me in. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. But yes, my story is even before sex work enters the picture. It was very interesting because I was kind of involved in the MLM before I got into sex work, right? So let's
Mm,
see. I'm trying to think. So I've been in the adult industry as a whole for going on 7 years now.
wow.
I've been in the online arena for the last 3 years. February is actually my 3 year anniversary, porn anniversary, porn anniversary.
Yay. Whatever.
But let's see. So I got started originally in this. So I was in undergrad originally back in like, God, I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But even when I was in undergrad originally, I was sugaring on the side. This was when I was in undergrad, like before I dropped out. Because if you know about that part, which we will get to,
Yes.
I was sugaring. I like was basically going out for like I was so broke because I was a college student. It was horrible. I would just go out for free lunches and free dinner.
Oh,
It was
girl,
horrible.
I hear
I'm like,
you.
oh yeah. I'm like,
Real sugar
oh, yeah.
babe.
We've been there. We've been there.
Yes.
But just before my final year of undergrad, my brother, it was in the summer, right before my senior year of university. So yeah, my brother had no idea, how to reconnect with me, I guess is what his idea. So he met these two people that turned out to be his like sponsors into the organization to this MLM, right?
Mhm.
And he met them through like I think he sold something on or bought something on Craigslist, and that's how they met. And they connected him, and then a week later he connected me with them via like what's called a board plan. So he invited me over to his house, my brother did, and he showed me the plan. It's called the
Mm,
plan.
okay.
And I was like, wow, cool, money. That sounds fun. Money, cars,
Money.
private jets. Yeah. So, and he was my older brother, and I thought it was a great way to reconnect with him. Because we didn't like drift away on bad terms or anything. It was just, it was just time. We drifted apart.
Mhm.
Um, Smash cut to like maybe a month later. This organization, for some context, holds four major what they call major functions every year, so one per quarter. So the one that was coming up was I was living in Virginia at the time, and we basically flew down to this function down
Mhm.
in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That was like Friday to Sunday kind of thing, a weekend, and I was dazzled. I'm not gonna lie, because the entire weekend is just full of people telling their essentially what is a rags to riches story.
Mhm.
Culminates in a Sunday, quote unquote, optional worship service of some sort or Sunday service of sorts, which I didn't grow up religious. I was always very like witchy and spiritual. I still am. I
Hmm.
think it's probably because of the true roots of my heritage. I'm Peruvian. There's a lot of witchy shit that goes on there.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Like ayahuasca, hello. It's like, or quite, I'm pretty sure originates in Peru, which I've yet to do. But so we get there to the Sunday worship service, and like some weird thing happens between my brother and I in terms of we had some weird coming to Jesus kumbaya moment. And
Oh.
I don't know if it was necessarily like we were quote unquote saved, but I don't know if I'd necessarily consider us being saved. I think my brother and I just reconnected and it was nice and something spiritual happened, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't say something necessarily Christian specific happened, but I went with it for a long time because I was like, you know what? If this is the way, then this is the way. Like this is I saw the I was so young at the time. I was like 23, 22, and I'm 29 now. So that was a long time ago actually. Jeez.
Yeah, yeah.
Feels like it was like a year or two ago and it wasn't. But I just saw the money and it wasn't necessarily their sponsors, but they would bring out people like the people that are speaking at these quarterly functions are the people that are at the highest level. They are the people that are making 100, 200K a month probably, which
Right.
is wild because I literally make that now. And I don't flash my money like that, like they do with the private jets and like the cars and like the things I never cared about with to begin with, and still don't.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, if this is the way to be rich and like to be a good person, and to be a good person means going to church, like sure, I'm gonna go along with this, because you see people with authority. These people almost became like my pseudo parents. My
Mm,
actual parents are amazing. They've always been super great. Haven't always seen eye to eye about everything, but what child and parent relationship hasn't been perfect, you know what I mean?
exactly.
No, there's never anything traumatic that happened. So I'm like, people are like, why are you like this? I'm like, I don't know.
I just am.
I'm a very curious person. So I continued with this organization while still living in Virginia. I continued on with my undergrad for a little bit. I tried to drop out, but initially my parents were so mad. So I like stayed back in school for like a few more weeks. And then eventually I just stopped going to classes. I like
Mhm.
officially unenrolled in undergrad literally one semester before I was supposed to graduate. I quit
Oh my
school.
gosh.
Yeah, I quit school and then I ended up moving to Seattle because that is where my coaches and the organization are, like is based out of. So to be clear, so MLMs are one thing, multi-level marketing companies, and training organizations are another. The specific training organization that I was in was called Worldwide Group, and the MLM, which is the product line, is called Amway. So
Oh,
I kind of
yes.
like
Way, yes.
pretty much everyone's heard of Amway, Scamway.
Yeah.
I kind of so not just a scam necessarily, like I didn't experience too much of the scam parts of it. It was more like the indoctrination parts of it. And that is not a consistent theme throughout everyone that has experiences with MLMs. And it frankly took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that I was in a cult, because
Mhm.
people would be like, oh, you were just in like a pyramid scheme. I'm like, people equate to like Mary Kay. I'm like, no, this is not like Mary Kay or your Avon lady down the street. This is
Yeah.
vastly different because there was a specific training regimen. The way I like to compare it to is think of like the brand Dole pineapple, right? So Dole pineapples are sold in Walmart, Target, whatever kind of other grocery stores that might be near you, whether it's Vaughn's or I don't know what kind of grocery stores they have in Canada. We have like Lowe's in North Carolina. We have all kinds of Trader Joe's,
Yeah.
whatever. So all these stores sell Dole pineapple, but each store is a little bit different. Like Walmart and Target are a bit of a different experience. So
Yes.
that's how we would compare ourselves in terms of the training organizations. There are other training orgs that are more like a lesser version of a store, whereas others, like our organization, was very suit and tie. We like had to dress up for everything, just for the professionalism aspect of it. So I moved to Seattle. I ended up breaking up with my college boyfriend at the time because he really wasn't involved with this company. He didn't really understand it. So I was like, whatever. So I'm in Seattle and I get there. I decided to like my coaches, I say encourage in a lot of areas, but I don't think encourage is the right word. I think they very much like pressured me to be celibate because they're like, Cami, you need to be a born again virgin. I think that's the right way. You need to cleanse your body, blah, blah, blah. I had no idea, and neither did my brother. My brother did stay at home. Like, he was continuing going to church, doing a good thing. Like, it helped him kind of clean up his act
Mm-hmm.
a little bit in terms of like trying to be a little bit more sober. He didn't have an alcohol problem, but he also didn't use it very well either. And he
Yeah.
recognizes that. So it kind of helped him stay straight and form a community of supportive people out there via going to church. I didn't really get that. But so I had no idea going in Seattle how religiously conservative and extremist that my coaches were. My
Mm,
coaches were several, like, if it's like a ladder, right? There were several people above me because the people like in between me and them, it was an older couple that were like in their 60s, mid to late 60s. And it's funny because Seattle is such a, as I've come to know it, such a very open, vibrant city, and
yeah.
very
You can
like like
tell.
very socially liberal. And
Yeah.
it's like, of course I find the most fucking conservative people in the state. So I moved there not knowing what to expect. I just moved there on a whim. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna follow my dreams. I want to retire early. That was the whole shtick that this company had, this organization had, is you're gonna retire by 25, retire by 30, quit your job forever, blah blah
Right.
blah,
Yeah.
be financially independent. I'm like, that sounds great.
Of
So I
course.
get to Seattle, and the first inkling, the first red flag that I got that this organization was something was off, or at least with my particular coaches. One was that they were pressuring me to be born again, like a born again virgin or celibate. So I was like, whatever, okay, sure.
Yep.
I have no interest in dating, anyways. I want to build my business, build my company, continue recruiting people. This is a recruiting heavy business model.
Right.
We a lot of other MLMs are more sales heavy. This was
Mhm.
more recruiting heavy. You still had to sell your own product because that's how it stays legal. Is you're not just
Um,
recruiting people and like taking their money. You have to have a product that or something that you're selling.
gotcha.
So you just kind of just open up your own store, online store, and just kind of buy from yourself, and maybe have your parents buy some laundry detergent or water or energy drinks. We sold everything. We had
Yeah.
makeup, water, energy drinks, everything.
Yeah.
But the biggest red or the first red flag was when the wife of the couple that was mentoring me. And by the way, they were flying out every 2 weeks in Virginia on their own dime to help build my team. So that's why I was like, wow, these people really believe in me.
Yeah. Totally.
So when I got to Seattle, I was having a conversation with this woman, with my coach, one of my coaches, and she brings up the fact that yoga is demonic and like
God.
like something like the devil created. Like, I think I don't know how that got brought up. But I was like, that's fucking weird. Like, who
Yeah.
says that? Who says that? Like, I don't know if it's because of like yoga pants. I have no idea. But I was like, that's super weird, man. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, they're just kooky, a little bit loony. They weren't just loony because it just kind of kept going on and on and on. And then so I stayed celibate for probably like 6 months. I continued working full time. I just picked up whatever job I could. Like, I think I worked in software sales for a little bit. I lasted like all of 6 months before I randomly met a guy. I was working a side job at a winery because wine is really big in the Pacific Northwest, not
Yes.
just California, but Pacific Northwest has amazing wine.
It
Some
does.
of my
Thank
favorite.
you. Yes.
Yeah, some of my favorite, like, oh, a Willamette Valley Pinot Noir is like delicious.
Yes. I'm
From
actually
Oregon
heading
is
there
like my
next week.
Willamette Valley, really?
Yeah, I'm heading down to
Oh my
Oregon.
god, oh fuck yes. Oh, have you been there before?
I have. I have. I am a fan. But if you have
Huge
more
fan. I couldn't.
recommendations, let me know.
Yes, I don't think I could live there, but visiting, yes. It's very kind of gloomy weather, but I'll stay in the sunshine in Colorado. It's
Yes.
fine. So I was working at this winery, right? And I think it was like Christmas Eve of a million years ago. It was Christmas Eve, and this guy walks in, this like really regal looking Polish man, and he walks in, and I'm just like wait, it's Christmas Eve. I'm closing up shop. He walks in last minute to get a present for his friends or whatever, like a dinner party he's going to, and it's like snowing. I'm like, of course, my first white Christmas. This is so nice. And he just like whisked me away emotionally. And in a lot of ways, yeah. So he turned out to be a complete asshole. Like he was very like
Oh.
emotionally avoidant. He had issues. Also happened to be like a military veteran, which he never talked about. I know he was in the army. I'm pretty sure. I have no idea what his occupation or was MOS was in the military specifically.
Mhm.
And before him, when I was 18, I dated a guy that was in the Marine Corps who had went into the Marine Corps while we dated, and that also did not end well. So I was
Oh,
like, pattern, weird with
yeah.
military. And I feel like that's where the seed was planted. I was like, weird. Okay, there's something up with these military guys that I'm weird somehow attracting to my life, who have like who some may or may not have issues, but um my vow of celibacy quickly broke. And then a couple weeks later, I basically go up to my coaches. I was like sitting on my hands. I'm like, I don't want to tell them, because if I tell them, I know they're gonna like I'm gonna hear it and I don't want to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
So I tell them, and they're like, Cami, oh my gosh, it's gonna be okay, just repent. I'm like, what is this? I feel like I'm like, am I in seminary school, like what?
Yeah.
It was
Yikes.
super super weird. So like, but it was fine for a bit, and then I just continued seeing him. Ultimately, meeting him was how I got out of the organization, because I was more distracted by him, and like being
Mhm.
around someone, basically a civilian to the outside of the organization, helped
Transition.
me kind of get some perspective again. He
Yeah.
never knew, and he still doesn't know that I was in that organization. I kept it a secret the whole time. He still does not know.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because I mean, like, when you're in these organizations sometimes too, and like, because I'm also like really interested in learning about this, not like obviously not joining any one of them, but like they're fascinating to hear like the psychological effects and the trauma that can happen in these organizations. But when you're in it, it's kind of like blinders on.
Yeah, you just don't know. You feel like a fish in water is like the best way I can describe it, because you're being surrounded by people solely, strictly that are also in the organization. You're getting like when I was in this organization, you had a very specific, basically to do list, task list of chores that you had to do every day that included, and they were like personal development is how they kind of framed it as, but you had to listen to one CD or one audio a day of basically it was like a set list of different stories of people telling their rags to riches story, different couples that had made it big in the company. You basically have to listen to
Right.
one of those every single day, and they're like an hour and a half long, so it was really annoying. And then
Oh
you
my
have to read
gosh.
like, yeah, then you had to read 15 to 20 minutes out of a book every day, and it can only be a book that's on the approved reading list. So they curated all of your input, like anything like you can't watch, like you couldn't watch certain shows. You like it's wild, like retelling the story, because I'm like, wow, this is super weird.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
totally.
they constantly taught you to be careful as to what you put in your mind, that everything else is like poison. You don't want to poison your mind with the outside world, with outside people. That's why you don't have sex, because you don't want your body, your mind to be poisoned by
Right.
lust, by greed, by whatever.
Want to keep it pure.
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
my
Very
gosh.
puritanical.
Yeah.
So that it was very interesting that I was even able to hide it, because I was frankly embarrassed, I think deep down, that I even got into this position this far, and I was letting people basically dictate what to do with my life. But I felt invested because I moved literally across the country from Virginia to Seattle
Yeah.
into a 110 square foot apartment. It was tiny. I was paying $1,000 a month for 110 square feet. Yeah, Seattle was very expensive. Pretty sure
Yeah,
it
it
still
is
is.
expensive. It is, it is. I live in Vancouver just above Seattle, and it's equally expensive.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically the
Same
same.
thing, basically.
Damn, and sorry, like
And
at this point, like was your brother still in Virginia as well? Like did you have any support systems out in Seattle, or just like the guy that you were dating at the time?
pretty much just like the guy I was like dating or whatever in a situationship with at the time. My brother, I think, had kind of slowly pulled away from the organization because he was no longer getting support really out there.
Mm,
The people who sponsored him also moved to Seattle. Like a bunch of the group that was sponsored all kind of collectively moved to Seattle at the same time to be around um,
the
our
organization.
coaches and our organization,
Right.
just for better access. So the fact that I was able to keep this a secret from this guy was a miracle.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately what caused me to kind of stop. I ghosted a bunch of these people, but I still would talk to them on like a basically every day. every other day kind of basis, just to kind of check in. And I would go to board like every night. We'd have to go to meetings. I'd work my 9 to 5, and then from 5 to midnight or 5 to 1 to 2 a.m. we'd have to go to meetings, board plans, like try to recruit people, try to meet people. Every day, I also had to basically approach 5 people and do what's called drop the message. And if anyone else has been in this organization, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about because it's the same verbiage used for this particular organization called Worldwide Group. And I'm not talking, just to be clear, I'm not talking negatively. This is just my personal experience with Worldwide Group. Just FYI, just a disclaimer. Everyone has different experiences. I'm
Totally.
not blaming Worldwide Group. It's more of the particular individuals that
Right.
I was involved with. So I'm seeing this guy, right? And having sex. Like, we're not really, like, I'm pretty sure I cheated on him. I don't really know. We were never official. So I slept around with other people too. And I was like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
And one day, I guess like I watched porn one day. I was a very regular porn watcher to begin with, but I guess I like wasn't watching porn, I guess, for the majority of the time in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched porn and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to tell my coach,
Oh my
Larry.
gosh.
And I'm like, oh my God, I need to tell him. So I go to his office, like we meet, and I go to his office and tell him, and he's like, Cami. And he's like, will you pray with me for a second? So we like hold hands, so we're like praying.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
he's some sort of like tax attorney or estate lawyer. I can't remember, some kind of very boring lawyer. And he had a beautiful office overlooking the water. And I'm just like watching the whales in the distance. And I'm like, what are we praying about? And he proceeds to tell me that he's like, Cami, you are a sex addict, and I think you need help.
What?
I'm like Lily had sex like 3 times basically and watched porn during this whole like year long period, basically like 6 to 12 month period. And he's like, "You're a sex
A sex
addict."
addict? Oh my gosh. It's a bit of a
I'm like,
stretch, but okay.
yeah. I was like, okay. so, so the next step for him was to send me to a some sort of therapist, in quote unquote therapist,
Hmm.
trauma therapist. And it's basically it turns out to be some like random Christian lady who probably took an online course, is not an actual
Wow.
certified, like,
License.
therapist,
Yeah.
licensed
Oh my
clinical counselor or therapist who specializes in sexual trauma. And basically the entire session, I had to pay like $300 or something crazy for it out of pocket. I'm like, I'm broke, but okay,
oh my
if this
gosh.
works. And she had me recite everyone I've ever slept with as a way to like break bonds or whatever. Break the bond,
That's so
Cammy. Break
strange.
the bond. And I literally got to like I only got to so many people where I'm like, I forget. Like I literally don't I have no idea how many people I've slept with. Like this is hopeless. And then she just gave me a bunch of CDs basically to listen to.
Oh my gosh.
And it was super weird. Yeah, and I was like, that was more traumatizing than anything. I was like, I call it slut conversion therapy because she was
Yeah.
essentially trying to get me to stop being a hoe.
Oh my gosh.
But from there, that's where I really started to pull away from the org. I was like, this isn't working. I think that yeah, that was the point. Like I wouldn't say there was like a huge straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, but it was like the final it was a final straw of some sort. Where I really kind of that's when I hard ghosted. I was like, fuck these people. Like and
Yeah.
then some other things happened. I went through some like more like kind of I had an experience of like severe physical trauma like in while I was in Seattle.
Oh
Just because that was a
no.
trigger warning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at a party, and some like really bad shit happened. Like I was basically almost killed by someone who also happened to be a military veteran. I did not know him. It was not the guy I was dating, it was somebody else. Um, for a long time, I was upset at the guy I was seeing because I'm like, you were there. Why did you not do anything?
Yeah.
He was like too drunk to like take care of me, but no one needs to take care of me. That's no one's responsibility or fault. Um, so yeah, I'm like, that was it. That was the actual straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, clearly my time in Seattle's over. I basically sold all my shit. 2 weeks later, I move
Wow.
and I'm in North Carolina. Why North Carolina? Because my parents had retired at that time, and we have a beach house, like a family beach house in North Carolina. So I basically just went and crashed with them.
Hmm.
Um, just I'm like, Mom, Dad, help me,
Yeah,
and they
totally.
did. So I basically re-enrolled back in school, back in undergrad. I was like, you know what? I want to go back to what I originally wanted to do, which was occupational therapy.
Right.
When I was an undergrad, before I dropped out, I was still trying to pursue occupational therapy, but I wanted to work with kids at the time. Since then, I've grown to really dislike kids, to be honest. I'm like, kids, working with kids is not my cup of tea. So I wanted to work in occupational therapy, ironically, with military veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. But
Wow.
also, because of what I experienced, I was also highly vested in improving conversations around sexuality and
Mm,
intimacy and sex in general in the medical field. Because
awesome.
occupational therapy, if you don't know what occupational therapy is, people think occupation as in job. Think of occupation as what occupies your daily life and what you need to do on a daily basis to literally just live your life, like brushing your teeth, going to the bathroom, walking your
Right.
dog, driving your car. Those are all
Mhm.
occupations of like activities of daily living that we all need to do.
Totally.
Even like yeah, you go to the grocery store, like creating a budget for yourself, like those are all occupations. It's very broad, but it's very beautiful because you get to help people resume and return back to their lives in a way that is appropriate and meaningful to them.
Awesome.
So sexuality is included in that umbrella, whereas sexuality is not included in a lot of and is not included in other arenas within the
Right.
medical and healthcare field. So like, okay, relationships, let's talk about them. Like
Yeah.
if someone had a hip surgery, we need to address, or medical professionals need to be able to be prepared to address safe positioning, safe like there's a lot of different things, safe positioning, um, conversations around sexuality, consent,
Mhm.
especially like nursing homes. It's a whole weird thing.
Yeah, we never even think about that kind of stuff ever.
Yeah,
So,
positions that may conserve energy as well. If you had like a heart attack or had any cardiac issues or even any sort of illness,
mhm,
is also hugely important. So that was one of my big passions as well because I've always been a weirdly sexually curious person, and it
mhm.
was kind of like, okay, brave new world, I'm back, like I'm back.
Yeah,
So I was having to rediscover myself post MLM,
yeah.
post cult.
Yeah, I mean, question, like,
Yeah.
did you suffer from any trauma from the MLM, or was it just, like, a huge disruption in your daily life for that year?
It was both, because I think it took me a couple years because I kind of associated everything negative that happened to me to be like everything that happened in Seattle. So my like the physical assault that I just survived,
Mhm.
the MLM, it was like all one big thing that happened together, and I associate Seattle. So like I have since been
Mhm.
back to Seattle once, and it was slightly healing, I think, because I like told myself I will never go back. I fucking hate that city because of what happened to me. So I think
Yeah,
going back was like a little bit cathartic. I still wouldn't like choose to go to back to Seattle, but I also know that no one's gonna hurt me there. No one's like I'm in control of my life now.
right. Good for
But in
you.
terms of like yeah, in terms of like repressed, there was a lot of repressed sexuality, and I think it also had to do a little bit with my assault, with kind of
Mhm.
which is a very normal reaction when you suffer any sort of trauma. It could be grief. You
Yeah.
can be either like you can kind of become sort of hypersexual, like superficially hypersexual, or hyposexual too. I think those are totally normal trauma responses, and I became very hypersexual. I was like going through guys like underwear on a daily basis, sometimes twice a day. My parents were not having it. They're like, Cami, you need to like don't invite people, don't stay out late. They were
Yeah.
trying to like and they're trying to implement a curfew on me, and I'm like, I can't do this.
That's not gonna happen. Nice
No,
try.
like I'm like I am 20. They're like at the time I was like 25. I'm like I'm not what like they just assume like if their child lives under their roof. It's a very like Latino thing.
Mhm.
Like if your
Yeah.
child's under your roof, then like you have say over their life. I'm like that does not like I lived on my own before this. I just am this is a landing pad for me. So I'm like don't get it twisted. So thankfully though, my parents at the time so I was finishing up my undergrad online and then pursuing my prerequisite courses to be able to apply for graduate school. And then I
Nice.
got into grad school. So, yeah. So thankfully at the time my parents were traveling a lot because they were retired. They were traveling all over the world. So I was working a little job at like a eye doctor as an optician, and that was
Mhm.
super boring, and it was interfering too much with like my studies because I
Mhm.
was there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 basically.
Oh, wow.
So um I lived near an area called Myrtle Beach, South Carolina,
Oh, yeah.
and that area is heavily there's so many golf clubs and or sorry, golf courses. So
Right.
along with golf courses, there's like 300 between like within an hour radius, there's like 300 to 400 golf
Oh,
courses. It's
gosh.
crazy. So
That's
everyone we call like the Northerners, like people from like New York, New England, that whole area would come down in the spring and fall during golf season, not summer, only spring and fall. Because
Mhm.
summer's family time, but in the spring and fall, it's like it's a weird phenomenon that goes on in like the U.S. I don't know if it's just the U.S. or if it's everywhere in general that has golf areas, but it's like
Weird.
these guys would get together every year, and they've been doing it for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and they have like a boys' week. It's basically, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. It's so weird. It's like a
Yeah.
bachelor party when they're 40, and they do it every year. And like the
Yeah,
wives have kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. And of course, there's strip clubs out there. So
of course.
I took a job as a cocktail waitress at a strip club, and that's kind of where I got my start. I was seeing a couple sugar daddies when I was living in Seattle, but
Mhm.
nothing crazy. Like I said, I was kind of just uh,
Coasting and just having
coasting,
fun.
yeah. I just wanted free meals. And I appreciate the conversation. And I know like I went out with a couple CEOs of some nonprofits, which I'm so they weren't really sugar daddies, they didn't have a lot of money, but I was like, I love charity, and that's cool because I got to get a more inside view of how organizations are run
Right. Yeah, totally.
from their perspective. And ultimately I learned a lot how to hustle in the strip club, even just as a cocktail waitress from being in the MLM, because was taught how to market, how to promote myself, sales, how to
Totally.
like people skills, even like we had to read a shit ton of books on people skills. And I thought I was outgoing, but um, in retrospect, I know for a fact that I am much more of an introvert because I like to stay home. But you're taught in this organization that it is the right thing to like ask people how their day is going, and basically it's the right thing to bother people every day.
Right.
Because
So
sometimes, like, I don't know, it was very much out of my comfort zone to like compliment people constantly and be like, and try to like find one liners to like open up conversations with people. So, yeah, I was
yeah.
working at a cocktail waitress in Myrtle Beach, and I did pretty well there for a while.
Yeah, so at this point you're starting to kind of take the skills that you learned before and also with the sugar daddies that you were going on dates with to kind of build your sales skills and marketing skills at this point.
Exactly. Yes. Like you're upselling bottles. You're like trying to sell experiences to different guys throughout the night.
Mhm.
It was a lot of I had so much fun. It was so much work. I was working basically 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. wearing 5-inch heels as a cocktail waitress, which is stupid. But
Oh my gosh.
these clubs are very old school, and
Mhm.
they want to maintain that kind of
Look.
aesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
for
know.
that crowd because it is a much older crowd. Which it is what it is. But I had a great time. And then I was living on a tiny island at the time. And then, so a lot of people end up finding out that I was working at the strip club. And my parents knew about it the whole time. But like, they were getting approached by neighbors, like, oh, do you know your daughter? Is she okay? And my mom was like,
Mhm.
excuse me? Like, why are you talking about my daughter? Don't you
Yeah.
bring up my daughter. I'm like, yeah, mom, tell them. I do what I want with my life. But that's kind of when I realized my time there was over. So then I moved to a nearby city called Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mhm.
And that's when I ended up meeting a stripper at a very exclusive club in the area. And she basically got me an audition, and I started stripping, and it was
Nice.
fun. It was right across the street from an airport. So there was lots of people in and out.
Yes.
Great location for a strip club if you think about it. Like people have a layover, they'll just like hop over to the strip club really quick across the street. They had great food too. But I had some of my best times there, truly, at this strip club, and really got an inside view of of my growth from being a baby stripper to like more of a veteran. And like if you're in this 6 months, you're like basically a veteran. If you survive 6 months and you learn and
Relax.
you don't get like beaten down either by other girls, emotionally,
Yeah.
obviously, like by other
Yeah.
girls, because it is a very catty, or it can be very catty environment depending where you are.
Totally.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and also management can also be an issue too.
That was the main thing, yeah, management. Because I'm like, oh, I definitely had a guy pull his dick out during a private dance, and like they didn't kick him out. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
That's so
Like
stupid.
I was like 2 seconds away from like stabbing him with my pleaser. So, but I didn't. But I very much it was funny to see the progression because as a baby stripper, I was very like shy, submissive, Cami. Like,
Right.
oh sure, I'll do what you want. Like, you want to suck my nipples in the VIP room for $20? Sure. Like horrible. And
Yeah.
then I figured out you don't have to let them touch you. And I was like, holy shit! Like they don't have to touch you because you go in this mindset like, oh, if they're paying, like, I'm taught to be, maybe as a woman or maybe like culturally, I'm taught to be a gracious host. Like maybe that like bled into my how I behaved or carried myself as a stripper. But like when someone pointed that out, they're like, Cami, you don't need to let them do that. I was like, what? And
Mind blown.
yeah, my eyes got like real wide. And I was like, cool. So then I became dominatrix Cami for a hot minute. And I got paid like $3,000 one time to just tweak a guy's nipples for like 20 minutes. over his shirt.
Oh,
So
really?
that was
Oh my
cool.
gosh.
Yeah,
Cool.
I was just like tweaking his nipples for 20, 30 minutes for $3,000. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And I'm sure like as most strippers do, we have like some crazy stories, but it's not overall like not too crazy. Like it's crazy compared to like the civilian, the vanilla world, but it's like, it's like it is what it is. This late
Yeah.
nights, I'm tired. We go to Waffle House in the morning when we get off work.
Yes.
Nothing super unusual. Stripping, like, so that was just before that was before the pandemic, obviously, but that was helping me get by financially while I was in finish up my my undergrad, and
Mhm.
I had and going into grad school. I just found out at that time I got into grad school, so yeah.
Exciting. Exciting. And then like I guess were you using like did you get into sex work to kind of help yourself fund your schooling or just like to live?
That was it. I was very much a survival sex worker.
Right.
I would primarily work the day shift because if you worked day shift, which nobody really wants to work, you got free lunch and they made awesome
Mhm.
salmon and I didn't have enough money to buy myself any sort of nice lunch that wasn't either ramen or like anything else that's really or like hot dogs and mac and cheese. So
Right.
um I was like, this is a nice lunch that I get to have every day that's guaranteed, that's free.
Yeah.
It's very much like a shelter for me, to be honest. Like I was just a broke college student, but I was an older broke college student. I was like in my mid 20s, not my like I couldn't rely on my parents anymore at that point. They were
Right.
retired, so I'm not, they're on a fixed income. I'm not trying to ask my parents for help. I can support myself on my own, and I did.
Amazing.
And I had some great months, and then I went back to working not back to working, but I guess I returned back to Myrtle Beach to the
Mhm.
golf for golf season to work as a stripper this time instead of a cocktail waitress, and it was so much fun. And this was like February of 2020. And I'm like, great, so
Okay.
much fun. And then you're hearing the news and then you're watching the news and it's like, and then you start to get more and more paranoid of like being so close to people and like men like coughing on you and breathing on you. And I was like, oh my God. And then the pandemic pretty much hit in March and I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I am out.
Yeah.
I am so out. I had made an OnlyFans in February of 2020, even before I heard about um, the pandemic, because I was trying to do camming at the time. I wouldn't say I'm a
Mhm.
cam model, but I was on Chatterbait briefly.
Yeah.
It just didn't work well for me. I had no idea what I was doing, but it did help me get my initial customer base from Chatterbait came to
Good.
OnlyFans, which was very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I got my grad program started May of 2020 online. Healthcare program online. We were all trying our best. There were a lot of even medical schools that went online. I'm like, how do you
How
do
do you do
this
this? Yeah.
without patients or real people?
Yeah.
But yeah, then I started on TikTok, and then later that year in October of 2020 is when I went super viral. Because I gave away like free links to my OnlyFans, my paid OnlyFans for military veterans for Veterans Day.
Amazing.
So that one went super viral, and I got a huge boost to my page, and a lot of my customer base to this, or my audience base to this day, is still heavily military veteran. And I think it'll always be that way
Wow.
because they'll always hold a special place in my heart.
That's incredible. That's amazing. Is this also around the same time? I guess in terms of like your education and people finding out from your program, what you did for work?
It was like it was about it was exactly almost a year later. It was October of 2022. So I went on and continued my program online, and then January of 2021 is when it finally went back to like in person classes.
Right.
So that was nice. I'm like, cool, I can finally meet everybody.
Yeah.
Uh, and for some context, the program I was in, or the school I was going to, was a private school. And private school usually means it's a Christian funded school or
Right.
Christian founded school,
Mm-hmm.
which was fine. I mean, it wasn't, they weren't trying to teach us anything, but my cohort, my class size was about 35 people, primarily girls that were all younger than me. They were all like 21, 22, living with mom and dad.
Right.
Hadn't really left the state. They want to work in pediatrics. They want to work with the babies. I'm like, I don't want to. I want to work with adults, like
Yeah.
adults and older adults what I wanted, like the
Yeah.
population I wanted to work with. There was
Yeah.
maybe like 3 men in the class, and they were all super cool. I was like, these are my people, because
Yeah.
the other girls were like very much goody two shoes. So, summer of 2021, we have clinicals in person, and that's when I met my partner, Lev Lieben, who's
Mm-hmm.
also my co-creator,
Yes.
which I'm very glad I met him because I was dating someone really lame before him. He was like an orthopedic surgeon that just wasn't very much like small-minded in terms of like, oh, Cami, you're just a grad student with a really nice side hustle, but you're gonna be like, he very much encouraged me to just continue my education and just let this kind of what he thought was my side hustle that was literally making me like 20 to 30 grand a month at the time, which
Yeah.
is amazing money as a student. So he just very much diminished my sparkle.
Yeah, that's so annoying. Like, of course, it's being like, oh, it's gonna be a phase for Cami. Like, this is just gonna, gonna pass through this kind of thing.
And I find that more common in this industry, that like men will be like like kind of like quote unquote okay, or they'll like tolerate, or say they'll like, oh yeah, that's great, like you're in sex work, you do porn, that's amazing. And then like push come to shove, like 6 months later, they're like no longer okay with it. I'm like, what
Yeah,
happened?
like, that
What
literally happened to
happened?
me. Literally happened to me, and like,
Oh no.
ugh, so annoying. But it's okay.
I
All the
know. That's why I always tell people up front, I'm like, hey, I do porn. I am in sex work. Like this is, but I mean, at the time it was just supporting me for my school. So, once I met my current partner, my Lev, a lot of things opened up for me. That was like summer of 2021. Clinicals were a hot mess because we were literally online for the majority of the program, and then they like released us to the wild of real patients.
oh
And
my
I almost didn't. I was so close to not passing my clinicals
oh
because
my
I had
god.
no idea what I was doing. And then like the last week I passed. I don't know. I'm like the medical system in the U.S. is broken. That's how you know.
That's crazy.
Uh,
I mean,
but I
yeah,
also, yeah, I
much.
was working with a different population than I had really studied because my focus was neuroscience and neurological rehab. I was mostly working with like kind of like a very mixed population in a hospital, but they didn't have a neurology department, so I was very limited in my capacity of what I knew.
Oh my gosh.
um, but yeah, and then so in October, we clinicals are over by end of July of 2021, and by October of 2021, that's when a TikTok went super viral, and it had to do with me selling my boyfriend's used cum rags.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently, so when you have like TikTok, and if you don't use a VPN or any sort of like identity kind of protection or location like masking
Device.
software,
Yep.
people in your it'll pump it out pretty heavily to like your immediate area, which a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know. That's, you don't have a lot of control over it, unfortunately. So a lot of
Mm,
people in my like class found out, and the way I found out was that they knew was like one of them called me one day and was like, hey Cami, do you want to go to Walmart with me? And I was like, what? She was just trying to I've never talked to her in my life, like really, like she had my number, but we never really communicated. We were acquaintances, and she also wants to be buddy buddy, and was like trying to say things like, you know what, Cami, if you had an OnlyFans, I bet you'd smash. I bet you'd be so good at it, but like I bet you don't. I know you don't have one. She was like baiting me for information. It was very
mhm.
very peculiar.
Yeah.
And then there was a comment about like, do you have TikTok? I'm like, no, or like something about TikTok, and she's like,
Oh,
but your
yeah.
TikToks are funny. And I'm like, fuck, okay, she knows. Like, you saw my TikToks, then you saw my Instagram, and so you know you know everything. You were just baiting me for information to see if I would
Yeah.
admit to it, and I kind of did. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm like, who else knows? And she's like, oh, like nobody else. Like, she tried to lie, and then like two other girls knew. So I'm like, okay, now I need to talk to these girls and see what they know and what they're gonna
Yeah.
do about it, if they're gonna do anything about it. One girl called me, and I respect her so much for that, because she was like, Cami, I'm so sorry. Like, I will not say anything to faculty. Like, she was trying to like say like, I'm kinky too. Like, she's like, I've only ever had sex with one person in my life, but like we're into crazy shit. Like, she was trying to justify herself to me, and I thought that was so cute, because she like wanted to like relate to me in some way. But I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then the other girl never called me, because I just wanted to clear the air. I'm like, what exactly do you know, and what do
Totally.
you plan to do about it? Like, do I feel protected? The other girl never
Yeah.
called me, so I'm assuming she's the one that told faculty, because eventually faculty found out, and it was a stern conversation of, Cami, you can't be doing that. This is like, you're going into the medical field, blah blah blah. So I was pushed out of my program.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and I didn't care. Like, obviously, I was forced to leave my program, just through all like the bullying. It was very awkward, and the
Yeah.
bullying wasn't like, nobody ever called me a slut. People would just be like, people would just whisper constantly. Like, I'd walk into class, and people were whispering,
Mhm.
and in the middle of breaks during class, girls would run up to me and like ask me for like sex advice. I'm like, what the fuck do you think this is? Like, I'm
Uh,
not.
hate that.
Yeah, I became a spectacle, and
Yeah.
it was very, very uncomfortable for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm making a lot more money doing this, than I would be even as a clinician. As a clinician, I
Yeah.
would end up making like 60K a year. I was making that a month, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck these people. Fuck this program. Fuck the health system that I wanted to go into.
Good for
Because
you.
I saw a lot of that red tape over the summer too, and it was so disheartening. I'm like, the healthcare system in the U.S. is very, very broken. A lot of
Yeah.
people couldn't receive care because of their insurance, their Medicare, their Medicaid wouldn't cover it, and it was very disheartening to me to not give the care that I know people can get,
Yeah.
um, just because they simply can't afford it. It's not right. It's not right.
Yeah.
So that same month, within the span of 1 week, um, Playboy reached out to me and wanted to feature me on their website, because they had moved everything online, because
Online.
it's no longer a mag. Yeah, it's called Playboy Plus.
Right.
So, and that's all, like, they pay for me, like, it's not a paid thing. Like, they pay to have me on set basically, and they have a Playboy photographer. So after that, I got that call from them. I was like, fuck school, I'm leaving. This is my
Yeah.
sign. I am so out. And it was the best thing that could have happened.
Good.
Yeah, and then I
Wow.
guess here we are now. So like, I've been full time since October 2021 now. Full time in the adult content industry.
Wow, that's wow, crazy lead up and
It's a
everything
lot.
yeah, just kind of like fell into place. But also
Yeah.
like just want to say sorry that you had to go through that and also just kind of be denied for your program, especially like for you just wanting to help people. Um and especially yeah, we all know the American health system is really fucked up.
Yeah, and so many healthcare workers are underpaid. It's like, what do you expect?
Yes.
I worked with other strippers who were nurses. I'm like, clearly, like, there's a problem. Like,
There's
same
a
thing with, you
gap
see
here.
these teachers trying to like pay their bills by also doing OnlyFans. I'm like, we need to like destigmatize it, because it's not anything gross or bad. Like, it's not. We're just trying to support ourselves and also make a positive impact in the world. So ultimately, it's the best thing that happened, because I'm able to now make a much larger impact on the world than I ever
Mhm.
would have been able to as a clinician. As a clinician, or as any sort of medical professional, you can only help one person at a time,
Right.
with a maximum of 8 people a day, literally within an 8-hour day, work day. You're
Mhm.
probably looking more to like 5 to 6, because lunch break, some patients take longer. There's so much paperwork, admin work. You're getting bogged down and all that. But now I'm able to make, I'm able to 100x my impact that I want to make, because money talks. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's an incredible journey, and there, wow, like you have definitely gone through a lot, and were able to really turn your life around as well through these opportunities and through your work in sex work. So amazing story, crazy story, but everything fell into place.
It did, and it's funny, because I'm sure the happiest, healthiest, most financially secure I've ever been. My parents are so happy for me, because people are constantly on the internet like, fatherless, or father must be proud, or parents must be proud. I'm like, yeah, they are, because like, initially, like, does any parent want to be like, hear that their daughter's doing porn? probably not. It's not like their go-to. You know what I mean? It's not their first pick for
Right.
their child, but it's also at the same time, I'm able to literally pay my parents' bills. I'm able to provide for my parents, for my family in ways that
Mhm.
they weren't able to, and they see that support and they see that I'm happy, healthy, in a good relationship, in a good relationship first and foremost with myself,
Yeah,
which wasn't always the case.
that's so
So
important.
yeah.
And then now you're still, I mean, you're not helping people in the occupational therapy avenue, but now you're still helping people. Let's talk about like your charitable efforts in terms of like you giving back
Sure.
to the community and like donating partial proceeds of your OnlyFans, like your monthly OnlyFans earnings. I'd love to hear about this.
Yeah, so neurology and neuroscience was always my passion. That's kind of why I wanted to get into the occupational therapy or the OT world to begin with.
Hmm.
And not just work with military veterans. That was kind of just my first, like, I wanted to work with that population because I think I personally had a lot of, like, weirdly enough, I had a lot of trauma with a lot of people that were in the military. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I could be bitter or like try to understand it. And I think that's just how my brain works. That's how my trauma response worked, was like, I want to seek to understand a little bit better
Right.
as to why these things happen. I come from that kind of place of mindset that when bad things happen, I understand why and how, so
Yes.
that maybe I can prevent it or prevent it from happening from somebody else in the future. Maybe is my goal. But the military veteran population is a population that is highly disregarded in healthcare and has a lot of barriers to access in healthcare. But
Hmm.
in general, my platform now is really expanded to all like mental health and specifically alternative therapies within mental health. My passion very much lies within psychedelic therapies.
Oh,
So
cool.
funding, yeah. So funding like alternative therapies, retreats around like psilocybin, LSD, and
Mhm.
I follow a lot of research around psychedelics and as basically medicine. So
Mhm.
funding research trials is like kind of where my sweet spot is right now in terms of how I give back, because that's going to do a lot more for the future, especially in terms of legislation around psychedelics, which I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm really happy I live in Colorado because they
Yes.
decriminalize and basically legalize entheogenic plants. So very
That's
exciting to
awesome.
be. I know Canada, like you can literally buy, like in Canada, you can literally just order, like you can microdose online, like you can just order them online and they come to your door. I'm like, what? That is a
Yeah,
dream.
and we've
We're
got
not
mushroom
quite.
stores everywhere too, like, that's just, like, the new cannabis store. It's just, like, now it's all mushroom stores everywhere now. It's popping up,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, it's
cool.
like a mushroom dispensary, which
Yes.
we're we're not too far behind, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, because I think overall, and ketamine obviously is, I think it's now FDA approved. I can't remember, but
Mm,
you can find ketamine therapy treatment centers pretty much anywhere in the US now, any state, any city. It's so common now. So it's very
right.
cool to be living in this era of alternative therapies, because I know people who have tried traditional forms of medication and it hasn't worked for them. So being able to support people in this way is very meaningful to me personally. But I've also done like random things, like I'll give away money to random people. Like if
Love
someone at like I don't know, like I'll befriend a lot of my supporters, my subscribers, and like they'll sometimes, like especially early on, I have some OG subscribers and fans that kind of like dropped off the face of the earth, and I'll reach out to them like, "Hey, are you okay? Like what's going on?" And it's like, "Yeah, man, like I became homeless and like they impounded my car." I'm like, "Oh my god, like
that.
where's your car? How much is it?" $200 done. Here, what's your Venmo? What's your Cash App?
Yeah.
Um and then it's just little things like here and there. Like that happens all the time. I never tell my partner 'cause I feel like he's like, it needs to be by the book. It needs to be to like I need to get a receipt for it. I'm like, I don't care. Like I don't care. My accountant would be mad too. They're like, what is this for? I'm like, charitable donation, I guess. I don't know.
That's incredibly huge of you because, like, as I mentioned, I don't really hear about like a lot of people having the opportunity to give back. And of course, like, because you have such a large platform, you are at a privileged spot to be able to do this. But also, it is really amazing to hear of this because, like, we need more people to be like that. But also, like, a conversation that I had with Vanessa from Streammate, talking about companies that need to start getting behind their creators and also having a conversation about like how we can support. And that is something I would love to see in the future as well, not just from the creator, but also backed by huge platforms and companies as well.
Exactly, because that is a huge problem, or not a huge problem, but it is a problem in the kind of nonprofit industry. Is that if
Mhm.
they, depending on what the origin or what type of nonprofit it is, they will deny donations from sex workers. And I'm like, the fuck you care where my money came from?
Yeah.
Like it was obtained legally, so even if it wasn't, like just be grateful for the money.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
But
I definitely want to move into a space like of where I call it porn lanthropy. I'm like a porn
I love
lanthropist, so I kind
that.
of coined that. I've coined the term porn lanthropist. Um, Using your like literally like shaking ass and titties and getting fucked on the regular, and using it to fund money and redistribute wealth into causes we care about and to the people that need it. Like I think that's fucking
Yeah,
cool.
that is
Like yeah,
awesome.
I make a shit ton of money, but I want to make millions and millions of dollars a year so that I can distribute that to companies and orgs that need it locally, nationally, internationally. I think that is the coolest way to pay back, to like kind of pay it forward.
Totally. Oh my gosh. We need more people out there like you to do this kind of stuff. I think that's really great and so selfless as well. And like hopefully, yeah, you are being able to reach the people that you really do want to help. And it sounds like you're on the right track for that. So yeah.
I'm definitely trying. It's a work in progress. So I'm sure the next step for me is to eventually build out my own foundation. But I don't know quite what that would be yet because I am passionate about so many things. I'm like, I want to give money to random families, like buy random people a car, like that need it. Obviously, like if like
Mhm.
or like accessibility is a huge thing for me as well. If someone's like injured and they need a new vehicle, then let's get them a new vehicle. Let's pimp out their ride accessibly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many different ways you can do that. And I'm sure we'll have to do another follow up interview or something to see like where you're going next. Cause I think there's going to be some big things happening for you in this space.
For
So
sure.
very
Yes.
exciting. But there are a
Yes.
few questions that did come from the audience as
Ooh,
well that I feel we can
yes.
probably go into. So first question is like common misconceptions of being in a cult or an MLM.
Ooh, I think that people often think that I was like swindled. I don't know. I think the way it happens is often a misconception because it's like people are like, "Why didn't you know?
Yeah.
Aren't you stupid?" Like the people think I'm like that. We're a lot of us are dumb, but it like the process of getting into an MLM and like enmeshing in it is such a subtle process. It takes so much time, and it's such a subtle indoctrination that you don't really see it coming. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's
Right.
like you're so smart, Cami. Like you literally went to school for like basically neuroscience. So why didn't you see it coming? I'm like, because I it was people I trusted. It was my brother who
Yes.
also didn't know. He trusted these people too. He had no idea. And it
Yeah.
happens in very subtle ways. And even in the when I was in the MLM, we're basically taught to find the most vulnerable and desperate people. And I was very much vulnerable and desperate at the time. I was strapped for cash. I had my back against the wall.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They do definitely victimize people that, are in tough spots. And sometimes that can be marginalized groups of people. Um, BIPOC, unfortunately, get targeted a lot.
exactly. Exactly, because like my parents, came to the US to pursue the American dream, and I wanted to create that and then or pursue that for them as well. And I was just a
Mhm.
student. So and I ended up going into $20,000 worth of debt because they taught
Mhm.
me that like to use credit cards to buy my own products if no one else was buying. I'm like, Jesus. So I went into $20,000 worth of debt just in water bottles and perfume, basically.
Oh my
Useless
gosh.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. But yeah, like there's so many of those, like, Tinder swindler and like Nexium and like
Yes.
the yoga pant brand and like whatever,
Oh
all the
yeah.
so many of them. There's so many of them, right? But like people often forget to have empathy for those who get into these situations because they're people like you and me that, you're recruited by someone that you trust and they sometimes exploit that trust or the people above them are
Exactly.
exploiting that. So people need to also understand and put themselves into your shoes too, right? So
Right, exactly.
Um, this person is asking, how is she doing today? Does she still suffer trauma from being in the MLM?
Great question. I think with time all things passed, but I did go to counseling, especially after the trauma of my more physical trauma that I survived. I went to a fantastic therapist who specialized, ironically, in sex addiction. But I didn't see her for sex addiction. I know. She was like, she told me straight up, a real sex addiction counselor told me that I do not have a sex addiction, and that was the most validating thing ever. And she's
Awesome,
like,
the
"You're
same
just
therapist, right?
exactly a W therapist." Like, yes. So she basically helped me work through. I was just misusing sex as a coping mechanism at the time, after my trauma, which again is very common
Mhm.
for any sort of trauma. So
Right.
she kind of helped me a lot through that, and we became friends, and we still kind of communicate here and there, like maybe a couple times a year, just kind of check in. So she knows how I'm doing, but she's
Yeah.
super happy for me. Um, like being in sex work was and is has been so healing for me because I've taken back so much autonomy and control over my life, over my body, over my sexuality, especially in the independent creator realm. In
Hmm.
the mainstream, I mean, I know a lot of mainstream people get a misconception that people that shoot mainstream studio porn, which I do not, don't have a say. They do. You get to have a list of people that you want to fuck on camera. You can say no or yes to
Right.
whatever you want, and people forget that,
Yes.
that's the actual norm, not the other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I'm doing like super well, because I've recognized and I've learned, I've just become so much more self-aware that it was a cult, that it was experience, it was validated, and I can move on.
Oh my gosh. Well, so glad to hear. And it really sounds like you're in a good place right now and really grounded. So really proud of you to just be like
Yes.
in a good spot, in a healthy spot too. Um,
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's definitely doable.
the last question is, does the MLM you were in still exist to this day? And how can these quote unquote businesses continue? Are they not illegal?
As far as I know, it's still around, yes. I don't know how well it survived, to be honest, during the pandemic because it was so recruitment heavy and so heavy on initiating interactions with people in person. Like I mentioned before, we were like basically told to approach 5 people a day, and not like it wasn't door to door. It was just like out and about at the store or whatever, at like the mall, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well that survived, or if because they were very anti social media because they didn't want to be seen as like another like Herbalife or
Yeah.
whatever, or like Avon kind of thing,
Yes.
Tupperware lady. So they didn't want to be associated with that. So I'm thinking they're probably a lot heavier on the social media side now.
Mm,
I'm sure it's back to normal now, but it's really up to the individuals that sponsor you and your sort of lines, what are called lines of affiliation, which is kind of like your family tree that sponsored you. And my
right.
particular family tree within the organization was just heavily conservative Christian, like
Mm,
weird fundament more like fundamentalist than anything else.
yeah, gosh. And yeah, I mean that whole story and like just being so rooted with that and like forcing celibacy and just like the weird.
Yeah, and as far as the legality, no one's putting a gun to my head, so I mean, I get it, but at the same time, legally, it's a gray area. It is something that's I think being investigated right now, by
Yes.
some like pretty big news outlets because I thought I was alone, and they're finding more and more people have the same story. So I'm like, wow,
Oh.
okay,
Coming to a
not just
Netflix
me.
near you.
Probably, honestly, who
Yeah.
knows?
Well, I mean, thank you so much for just sharing your story and your bravery too, because like being so vulnerable and being able to shed truth on organizations like this can really potentially help people that are out there listening as well. And I'm just really particularly impressed that you're able to really just turn everything around and change your life for the positive.
Exactly. Like you can do porn and still change the world. You can do
Yeah.
porn to change the world. And I just think that's my biggest message is that you don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or like a teacher. You can do other things that will impact the world in much bigger ways, even if other people are trying to stop you, which clearly was the case for me. I had barriers to try to make an impact on the world, and I still found a way. So,
Yes.
yeah.
There is a way. There is always a way.
Yes.
But Cami, before we let you go, where can we find you?
So my Instagram is at Cami Strella. All one word. Twitter is at the Cami Strella, or you can go to my website, which is just camistrella.com, and you can find all my socials, all my platforms on there.
Yeah, for everyone else listening, it's Stripped by Sia on all major podcast platforms. Feel free to follow. You can go ahead and subscribe. You can rate 5 stars. That's how a lot of people can help gain access to the show, and it helps with visibility. So do your part in doing that if you are enjoying the content you are listening to and consuming. And again, it's patreon.com/stripped by Sia. You could also just go ahead and message me on Twitter. It's Stripped by Sia, as well as on Instagram. And if you want to be on the show, it's strippedbysia.com. You can kind of pitch yourself there, but give me a real pitch, because yeah, I need kind of need those. But yeah, new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight, and we'll catch everyone in for another great episode next week. Thanks so much for joining me, Cami. It was such a great conversation to have with you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Steph. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellanderama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.